All right. Daf Yomi for the evening is sponsored by Mr. and Mrs. Moshe and Susie Feder, Lili Nishmas, Mrs. Feder's father, Simcha Aryeh ben Yosef Tzvi, whose yahrzeit was on the 17th of ER. We are amidst going back over a conversation that was mentioned sort of on the side, that Abaye had made some kind of a statement that everybody agrees about a witness when it comes to sota, and everybody agrees about multiple witnesses in sota, etc. Now we're going to go through each line of that statement and explain what it's talking about. So the first line we explained at the end of the shiur yesterday, that everybody agrees about the single witness by sota, that once there's one witness, if that one witness actually, if there is somebody who actually witnesses that the woman actually did commit znus, so then if she did actually commit adultery, then there's no sota. The sota is canceled. She gets divorced without iksuba, and that's that. So everybody agrees to that. Next issue is hakol modim be'edei sota. The other thing that everybody agrees with is the case of the two witnesses of sota, shepoter be'edei kinui. That if by the circumstances where there's two witnesses of sota, where somebody makes the witnesses of sota take an oath of testimony, right? So normally said by an oath of testimony, if a person lies and says, "I don't know testimony for you," so then I am then I'm going to be liable for the korban because I've caused a loss of money. That's the key element to it. I've caused a loss of money. This circumstance, these are two witnesses of kina, of the warning. The husband warned the wife in front of two witnesses. And so if then the fellow comes to Beis Din and says, "You guys know testimony that my wife was warned," right? And that's what the comment is. Even if they swear falsely, they don't bring a korban. That everyone agrees to. Why is that? Because dahava goreim, because at best, these witnesses' testimony is only causing a financial loss. They're not actually, because why? Because even if they were to testify, their testimony that the wife was warned isn't going to cause her to lose her ksuba. You need two steps. One, the wife was warned. Number two, she was secluded after the fact. That is what's going to wind up causing the issue. That's right. Degoreim, right? It's a goreim degoreim. It's a causing of a causing. Meaning, first of all, they would have to testify that she was warned. Then there would have to be another testimony that she went into private. Then there would have to be another testimony that she committed znus or the sota waters. So therefore, their desire not to testify doesn't actually cause any loss. It's not even a cause of a loss. So we're on to Lamed Beis, Amud Beis. Machlokas. What did I do? Pull this tablecloth too far. Okay, good. Whoops. Okay. I almost smashed my fingers. Machlokas be'edei sota. So now the next thing is the argument when it comes to the witnesses of sota. What's the argument when it comes to witnesses of sota? Mar savar davar hagorim lamamon kemamon dami v'chayev. Right. This is the circumstance where you have the witnesses. Right. They saw that she was secluded. This isn't the witnesses of the warning. This is the witnesses of the seclusion. Right. They're already one step closer in the process. They're what we call a goreim. They're causers. What does that mean? That means that if they were to testify that she was in private, that would cause us to then go to bring her to the sota process. Which, if she then decided she didn't want to be involved in the sota process, she'd lose her ksuba. So therefore, they're not actually taking her ksuba away, but they are causing her to get into a situation in which she could lose her ksuba. Now that's
it's suspended temporarily.
It's a cause, so it's like one step removed. So that is an argument, right? We know that if the testimony they don't give actually causes the loss of money, that's for sure a circumstance of a loss. If it's a cause of a cause, that's for sure not going to be a korban. But if it's a single cause, that's the argument. So that's the circumstance, right? So one says, davar agorim lamamon kemamon dami, something that causes a loss of money is like money, and you're liable. Umar sofer lav kemamon dami upater, and one says that it's not like money, and therefore you're exempt. Next case was hakol modim b'shekenegdo chashud al hashvua. Everyone agrees that in the circumstance where the person who you are testifying against is considered to be a liar, we already know that he's lying, and therefore he can't take an oath. So everyone agrees in that circumstance, we said, that they're directly causing a loss. Why? Because if that witness, one single witness would have testified, this one witness, right? If he would have testified, so then that would have caused this person to take an oath, which he could not take, which would have given the person who was making the claim the opportunity to swear and collect, which is then becomes completely under his control, right? That's and then because he's able to swear and collect, he gets that's considered to be a loss of money if you remove that opportunity from this person. Then we have hakol modim be'ed echad. Everyone agrees in a circumstance of a single witness. What's the case of the single witness? That there's going to be a liability. De Rabbi Abba. This is the circumstance of Rabbi Abba. This is the circumstance of Rabbi Abba that when we're talking about, which we're talking about in a minute. So first of all, let's talk about this case of this person who they swear against him that you owe money, and he says no, I don't, but he can't take an oath because he's a liar. The chashid man. So who's the person who's being suspected here? If you're telling me it is the borrower, he's the one who is suspected of being a liar. Damarli malveh. So that's a circumstance where let's say the lender says, "I osis ashadis li hava mishtabana v'shakilna." He says that if you would have given your testimony, your singular testimony to me, then the oath would have flipped over to me, right? So then I would have sworn and I would have collected. So v'lei malei. So still, why is that a direct cause of a loss? Maybe the witness can say back to him, "Miyemar demishtabata." Who said you would have sworn? Maybe you would have come to court and gotten cold feet and been nervous about it, and you wouldn't have sworn either. So Ella kegon sheshnein chashudim. The circumstance is actually even better. Both the lender and the borrower are both liars, and we're not going to accept either one of them as far as taking an oath. And in that circumstance,
would they be both chayev?
So we're going to see what happens here. Da Amar Mar Chazra Shvua L'Mechuyev Lo. So what happens is the oath first falls to the borrower, and we say to him, "You've got to swear that because as one witness says you owe the money. Do you owe the money?" He says, "I'll take an oath." No, you can't because you're a liar. So let's go back to the lender. The lender, you have to take the oath now, and you can swear and collect, but we don't trust you either. So what happens? Then the oath bounces back to the borrower again. And now the rule is that since you can't swear, you have to pay. Because that's similar to a circumstance where one witness would come along and say, "You owe him the money," and the person would say, "No, I don't." They would say, "Well, you've got to swear now because there's one witness." And he would say, "I don't feel like swearing." Well, if you don't feel like swearing, then you got to pay. So this is the same thing. Now that the oath is back on you and you can't swear, now you have to pay. So therefore, since both...
But they're both liars. Why is one...
Because we've got one witness. And the one witness isn't a liar, right? So therefore, we're following the one witness, and this guy's going to have to pay.
I thought we're not on an 8
That's right, but now we're not really. But it's the lack of the ability for there to be an oath that causes him to pay. One witness causes an oath. You have to be able to take that. You'd have to be able to take that shvua that you don't owe the money. That's true. You have to take that oath, but you can't because you've lied in the past. Therefore, when you can't swear, you have to pay. So it's almost not the one witness that's causing you to pay; it's your inability to take the oath that's causing you to pay.
I mean,
but they're both not capable of taking the oath.
That's true.
That's just so crazy.
But the witness is attacking the defender, right?
Right.
So that's why he has to pay.
Right. So in that case, we believe one witness.
We're going to believe the witness because the witness gave us a leaning towards that side. We're not believing the witness. The witness is causing an oath. You can't take the oath. Now you got to then. Okay, what am I supposed to do? You can't take the oath. You got to pay.
the witness, false witness, why are you going?
He's not a false witness. That's not the case. No. False witness is a different case. Other Gemara.
So wait, if there are two witnesses to the crime, what do you have to take it
No oath. No That's oath. Correct. No oath.
Oh, because there's one. Okay, fine.
Right. Hakol modim be'edecha. Then the last thing that Abai said, everyone's going to agree that with one witness, and the case of Rabbi Abba. Now, what's the case of Rabbi Abba? There was a circumstance. Who gavra dechotef nascha mechavrei. Okay, there was a guy he grabbed a silver, I think it was a bar, a silver cup, silver bar, I think it is, right? Ingot?
Ingots.
Okay, silver ingots. Okay, that's what he said.
Yeah.
He grabbed some silver coins or whatever they are, some chunks of silver from his friend, and he said, "That's the debt you owe me. You owe me that." So he grabbed it. Okay. Also, Lakami de Ravami. So they came before Rabbi Yami. Havi Yosef Rav Abba Kameh, and Rav Abba was sitting there in the Beis Din as the student, I suppose, who was there to be able to challenge and ask questions. Also, Aisi Chad Sada Demechatif Chatfa Mineh. So he says, so they brought one witness. The one witness says, yeah, he took it. So he says, so Amar lay in. So he says, yes, I did take it. Right? I'm not going to deny that what the witness is saying. The witness comes and he says, I took it. He's right. I did take it. Right? In chatafti, v'didi chatafti, but I'm going to tell you something else. It was mine. That's why I took it. So I'm agreeing that I took it. Right? Normally we would say, okay. So the witness would come and say, you took it. And you would say, yes, I took it. You'd have to return it.
Is there proof that was his?
No.
Because we believe the first statement, so we have to believe the second.
There you go.
You can't halfway believe it.
There you go. So Ravami,
What's that called again, Rabbi?
that is, what's the testimony since you believe the first? I cannot think of it. All right, well, I'll think of it right afterwards, okay? Ravami says, Hechi lidaini daini lahai dino. What is the way that judges should judge this case? Okay? Li shalem, what are we going to say? He's going to have to pay it back? Like a tresade, where there's no two witnesses. If there were two witnesses, right, then the source of the issue is, as Brian said, is that the source for the testimony that the fact that he stole is his own admission, right? So if there were two witnesses, then it wouldn't matter. We wouldn't have to believe any of the person's own testimony, and we'd be able to collect it back from him. But now there's only one witness, so therefore there's no two witnesses, so we can't make the guy pay. Liftere, let him off the hook. He says you can't let him off the hook because there is a witness, right? There's a witness. The witness says he took it. Lishtava. So what are you going to do? Tell him that he should take an oath because there's one witness. So he says, "Kevin Damar in chatfi v'didi chatfi havale kagazlan." He says, "Well, the fact is we can't let him take an oath. Why?
He's a thief.
He's a thief. He admitted himself. He took it. Okay, that's because he says it was his. Okay, but he's admitting he took it without permission. So we can't trust him. So Amalei Rav Abba. So Rav Abba said." You know what he is? He's a guy who's obligated to take an oath, but he can't take the oath because of a disqualification. That's the rule we said. As long as he's supposed to take the oath and he can't swear that what he's saying is true, he's got to pay. So therefore, we're going to make him pay.
And he said he took what was his.
Even though he said what he took was his, because what he said is, I took it. And now you're saying, a person can't make himself a Rasha. He's not really saying he's wrong. That's the thing. His testimony is, I took it, but I was righteous when I took it. But taking something without permission is still something that invalidates you from being able to testify or take a shua. So he just nullified him. He just made himself.
But your Naaman is first. You're believing him against his testimony against himself. Right, so how could you be picky about what you agreed to be the truth, right? How does that work?
We are believing what he has said is that he took it.
He said, but he also said he was.
You're right. That's what we called it. I can't think of the word. Right, when you're allowed to take one half of the testimony, but not the other half of the testimony. The two things come together, and should that be part of the issue? Right. That is a fair question. Why it is that I'm sure there are Rishonim that discuss. I'd have to take a look and see if somebody talks about why that doesn't seem to be the case here. It seems to be because I'm not sure that the fact that he says I stole it is relevant to the testimony of where he's saying I stole my own thing. I don't know. It's a fair question. I'm going to take a look around. Amar Rav Papa. So Rav Papa says, "Hakol modim be'ed misa shuchayv." You know, there's another circumstance where everybody agrees in a circumstance where one witness is effective, and that is a person comes along and says, "Could you swear? I need you to swear that you know that this woman's husband died." So now, if that's correct, if he swears that the woman's husband dies, so based on only one witness's testimony, she's allowed to go to the heirs and collect her ksuba. That's effective with only one witness.
Right.
Okay. So therefore, if he says, I don't know any testimony, and he does, then he's chayev for the Shevuos edus because he's caused the loss. Vehakol modim be'ed misa shehu pater, and also everyone agrees in a circumstance where he's testifying that the person who died, right, that he's exempt for. So we're going to explain what that is. Hakol modim be'ed misa shehu pater. Why is he exempt in that circumstance? Da'amar lali dida. Velo amar lahu lebeistin. Why? Because in that circumstance, he didn't testify to that in court. He told her about that, right? So, as we said, it's a technical issue. Shevuos ha'edus is only effective in a beis. So, ditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, ha'isha she'amra meis ba'ali, right? Tinaseh. If a woman says, "I know my husband has died," right? So that is enough for her to get married to somebody else. Even though she's a woman, she's not legally able to testify. It's her awareness. Because it becomes what we call it's hilchos isurim. It's not hilchos edus. I know this. If I know this meat is kosher, I don't need two witnesses to verify. I know it's kosher. If she knows her husband's dead, then she can get remarried. And that's enough, even for the other guy, right? That's the chiddush, is that the other guy can marry her. Okay? Meis ba'ali, if she says, not only that, but my husband has died, so tis yavein, she can do yibum with his brother, which is prohibited. She can't marry his brother if he's still alive. But because she says, my husband died, so that's that. Hakol modim, everyone agrees, be'ed misa shu chayiv. This circumstance, the person says, right, if he testifies, everyone agrees with one witness that he's chayiv. Delo amar ledida, because in that circumstance, he didn't say it to her. He didn't tell her that the husband died. Velo amar lehu lebeistin, and he didn't tell the beistin that this woman's husband died. Right? All he swore was, right? He swore that he doesn't know any testimony for her.
Maybe her husband's still alive.
So, we're talking about a circumstance where he's lying, right? That's the whole question, is whether it's a shvua. So since by not testifying in court, to her or in court, he has caused her not to be able to collect her ksuba. Right? So therefore he's chayiv. Delo amar ledida velo amar lehu lebeistin. Because he didn't explain it to me. I just read that line again. Shma mina. So we see from there that mashbia ede karka chayiv, dilma ditfisa metal, dilma, so he says shma mina. So what comes out from Rav Papa is mashbia ede karka. So if somebody's claiming land from his friend, the person says that land, you owe me that land, and now he brings witnesses to testify, and the person says, I won't testify on your behalf, and as a result, he doesn't take the land. So then he should be liable, right? He should be liable. Why? Because he's causing him a loss, financial loss, of not being able to collect the land. And we're going to see that that's an argument coming up later on. So this statement that we're making is, it all just depends. You're just making this. This statement is enough to be able to cause money. Therefore, you're going to be liable. So the Gemara says no. It doesn't prove it, because Dilma, maybe Rav Papa is talking about detfisa metaltali. That what happened is,
Right. Tuesday. Not something.
Because why is the issue is that the woman would be able to. Okay, let's take a step back a second to explain this. The fact is, the reason why is that the woman, when she collects her ksuba, is collecting. Her collectability is like she's able to collect from land. right? The ksuba puts a lien on the husband's land and property that we had learned before. Therefore, that's what the point is. Therefore, since we believe this fellow is chayiv because he's refusing to testify, giving her the right to collect land. So that proves that in other circumstances where a witness refuses to testify on a land sale, that also he's going to be liable. So the answer to that is it doesn't really prove that because it's possible that what's happening here is that a husband might reserve movable property and say, this movable property is going to pay your ksuba, right? If I rather than go and take the inheritance and the land and sell it and divide it and give that to you, I put money in the bank and I set that aside and it was ready for you. So therefore, when she makes her claim, she's really not necessarily making a claim against land. She's making a claim, a regular financial claim, and everyone agrees a regular financial claim is subject to the Shevuos Ha'idus. Now, the issue of Shevuos Ha'idus being applicable to land, that's an argument coming all along. But we just wanted to make sure that we understood Rav Papa isn't getting into that issue right here. And okay, at least we have it clear. If you're worried about why it would apply to land, why it wouldn't apply to land, that is technical coming up later, right? We'll discuss why land, why not land. But all we're just pointing out is that Rav Papa is not solving that issue right now.
Right. I would assume that the security would go on the land until she was paid out. No?
The security would go on the land. That is correct.
Right.
Yes, but we don't know if she's been paid out. Right. So therefore, if he makes the claim that your husband died, so then we will go and get money for her to be paid, right? And that would be the solution, not necessarily that we're going to go collect land. Right? The point is that it's not a ksuba payment can be, but is not necessarily land.
Right. No, it just sounded like the security was taken on the land, like meaning like they'll give you the money and then that's it. The lien is waived.
Correct. Yes, that's what we do. Okay, good. Fine. Kafar echad v'hoda echad. Okay, so now back into the Mishnah. Circumstance was somebody's coming to court. One of the sets of witnesses.
Okay. Now.
Also,
this is really a theme that I should have given before Shevuos.
I think this is still the case where it's two witnesses, right? So if the first witness says, I don't know any testimony, and the second one says, I do, so then the first one is liable and the second one is not. So the question is, in a circumstance, why is the Mishnah mentioning this case? In the Mishnah's first circumstance where they both said, we don't know testimony, right? Both of them are saying we don't know. And you said, Harishon Chayev Ashini Pater, the first one is the one that's going to be liable for the Shevuos Eidos because he's actually caused the loss, because without him, you don't have two witnesses. Right. And the second guy saying, I don't know any testimony, isn't Chayev Shevuos Eidos because his testimony is not going to cause anybody any payment anyway. The best it can cause is an oath, right? So kafar echad v'hoda echad mibaylit. So then why do you have to ask the question of what happens if the first guy said I don't know and then the second guy says no, I'll still testify for you? Of course, if he says he's still going to testify, he's not going to be liable. He wouldn't even be liable if he said he wasn't going to testify. So the answer is lo tzricha kigon shekafru shneihen. What happened here in the case is no, they both did say we're refusing to testify. V'chazer echad mehen v'hoda betoch kedei dibur. And then what happened is one of them said, you know what, I changed my mind, I will testify. Now we said you're not allowed to change your mind. We had mentioned that before. But he does so toch kedei dibur, right in the middle of within 2 seconds, that we said you're allowed to do. Right? Change what you have to say within toch kedei dibur.
Why is it allowed to change your mind within 2 seconds?
Because toch kedei dibur is kedibur dami, right? Within the speech, it's just like you're just correcting yourself. So therefore, it's like that's what you said in the first place. It's almost like whiteout. Right? You just remove what you said before, put this in instead. The hakamash malon, and this is now what this is telling us is titoch kedei dibur kedibur dami. So that this is now telling us that that's the rule, right? This is as that Yehuda was questioning. How do you know that if you change your mind that you can do that? The answer is that's the point of the Mishnah, to tell us that is the case. And therefore, despite the fact that one guy said, I'll still testify I won't testify, the other guy said I won't testify, and then the other guy says, actually I will testify. We are going to not hold the other guy liable, okay? So the point that it's teaching us is that we don't make the statement of toch kedei dibur, that toch kedei dibur is kedibur dami, and therefore you've admitted and said that you are going to testify, and therefore the testimony is, there's no Shevuos Eidos. Bishlam el Rav Chisda. So, okay, 1 second. I understand according to Rav Chisda, Demoke leilahu Rabbi Yossi Haglili, right? He established that the first part of the Mishnah, where we talked about both people being liable, and we said how could we had mentioned yesterday, how could two people be liable for the Shevuos Eidos? One is responsible, the other one is just a secondary, he's irrelevant. And he said, according to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, because Reisha Efshel Tzamtzim, so therefore what's going on in the first part of the Mishnah is that Rabbi Yossi is saying the reason they're both liable is because they said it at the exact same time. That's why they're both liable. The Seifa, and therefore this part of the Mishnah is to tell me, it's is coming to tell me that if I change what I was going to say in the midst of the 2 seconds, then my statement is reversed. And I'm not liable because I changed my mind. Elul Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, so then how did he interpret the Mishnah? He said it doesn't have to be according to Rabbi Yossi. He says according to everybody. So you can't say according to everybody else. You can't do two things exactly simultaneously. So the answer is one of them is going to be first, one of them is going to be second, so only the first one should be liable, not the second one. Reisha tok kedei dibur. So the answer he gave was, the Reisha was, they both gave their testimony within a couple seconds of each other, and therefore that's all considered to be one testimony. Well, if that's the case, seifa tok kedei dibur. The end case is also telling me that tok kedei dibur works. Well, tarti lamali. Why does the Mishnah have to tell me twice that tok kedei dibur works? Thank you for letting me know tok kedei dibur works. Now that I know it works, I don't need you to tell me it works again. So, Ma'udatim, what was your thought? Hani mili kfira. I would have thought that toch kedei dibur applies to when two people are saying, I refuse to testify. Kfira. And then the second guy does it also toch kedei dibur. Why? But, aval, however, kfira v'hodah, but if a guy first said one way and then he reverses himself, Eimallah would say not so. Why? Because the first case of toch kedei dibur is to say that these two testimonies are now linked together. It's this guy's testimony and then this guy's testimony, and since they occurred very close to each other, they're both liable. The second case is actually telling us something new about toch kedei dibur. That toch kedei dibur means that you can actually undo your own statement.
Right.
That's not the same thing as my toch kedei dibur can link me to the previous statement of the other person.
But didn't we already hear that you make a statement, you can just change it right away?
We said that, except if toch kedei dibur, right? Once we say toch kedei dibur, you can. And that's why it's important. So come out, that's why it's important to mention toch kedei dibur twice, because you're right, the Mishnah does talk about toch kedei dibur twice, but it's telling us two very different things about toch kedei dibur. It has two qualities.
One is it links to
one it links
and one it changes your
own. So correct. So if you said Mashiva Ruach then Morida Tal, then you're okay. You don't have to go back and repeat your Shmona Esrei, because you can change your own statement. Toch kedei dibur. Right, and then you change it within a second. Right, then. Okay, then you don't have to go back because toch kedei dibur dummy. How you
like how I spoke.
As long as you speak in the amount of time it takes to speak, and then we said the sentence was Shalom Alecha Rebbe. That's the amount of time that it is you're taking. How you shnei kitei edim. Now next case is the case of two sets of witnesses. You have two sets of witnesses. Kafar Rishona. The first set of witnesses says, we're not going to testify. Okay? Then the second set says, we're not going to testify either. Now, it should seem that the first set of witnesses becomes irrelevant. Because even after they're gone, you still have a whole other second set of witnesses. So the first set of witnesses is not... So Bishlama Shnia Tischayev. I understand why the second set should be liable, de kafra la rishona, because the first set is already gone. They're the only set left. So therefore, their denial is going to be relevant. El rishona, but the first set, when they denied it, amai. Why should they be liable? According to the Mishnah, they're liable for their Shevuos Eidos. Why should they be? Gimel Adalf. Hakaima Shnia. The second set is still in existence. They haven't caused any loss. So Amar Ravina says, what are we dealing with here? Kigon shahaisa shnia bishnas kefiras rishona krovin benishosehen. What happened was that when the second set, when they denied their testimony, they were related by marriage. They were related through marriage to each other.
Oh, so they're disqualified anyways.
Yes, they were disqualified anyway. So therefore, as a disqualified group, okay, so therefore that they were a disqualified group, they said they don't know testimony. So then comes when they said we are not testifying, they were completely irrelevant. They were not only because there was another set besides, and because they weren't even kosher eidos. So their denial meant nothing. Then comes the second set. And what also to note about their wives is v'neshoseihem gosasos. Their wives were very sick.
Then the first two would not be able to deny testimony.
I'm going to say whose wives were the ones that were sick? Ones that had psulim.
The first thing.
The nimtza ship. Which one's the first set?
The first set. The ones
nimtza ship kafiras hakasri shona.
Because that was the whole problem. They were related.
Yes, that's why I got it backwards. Right. The first set when they. Right, the first set, their wives were related, right?
And then they died after they refused testimony.
So what happened was, when the other set comes, they were the only ones that could swear and deny and be held accountable.
Right.
So therefore, when they swore and denied, they are accountable because they were the only set.
Right.
Then the wives die, which means that this new set now becomes a set that could have testified and made the person liable, because they're no longer relatives.
Right.
But since they denied it, now they're also liable, right?
Because what you're saying is they were never witnesses in the first place. That's why they're able to become, right? They didn't qualify as witnesses until the wives died. That's how they become the second set of witnesses.
Now, what's interesting about it is their denial preceded their eligibility. Nevertheless, since they in fact did deny giving the testimony, they are themselves now liable because at some point they step into the place of the first witnesses who made the denial. So they both can be, at some point in the process, they became eligible witnesses. That's the point. The first set were eligible when the second set was married to each other. They couldn't. And so when they denied, they're liable. Then the second set becomes eligible when their wives died. Now they become liable. They become eligible, and then they're now liable because they denied. So that's why both sets are liable. You might have thought to say, no, since the wives are going to die anyway, we would presume that they're not considered to be in a moment where they were ever eligible to testify, because we have to consider their wives as not there, as though they're not related and therefore eligible to testify. And at the moment they were eligible to testify, the other first witnesses were still around and they hadn't denied it yet. Right? So therefore, that's what it's coming to tell us.
But my question is,
does that make sense? Did I say that right?
But they have to deny a second time.
They
would have to deny.
That's what I'm wondering, whether they have to deny it a second time.
Because the first time they weren't even aiding. At least they were two aiding. Because they were related. It wouldn't work.
They thought they were climbing the tower.
And then it would be clear that they were a second set of witnesses.
Right? With all their books. And he stopped being here. And that was the end of the whole thing. I could talk about this for hours. It's a very interesting topic.
What was the order of the first?
What I want to say is this. What was this thing? What was this thing that the original king or they were trying to tell that all of the Talmudim are only to bring you to your protection? What is this thing?
I want to make sure it seems to me that they should have to deny it again. I agree with you, right? Because their first testimony would have been when they were Pasal Yedos.
Right.
But I'm not seeing that here. And I want to be able to figure out why that is. Anshe Rishona Krovim B'Noshe Seim. Anshe Akas HaShniya Krovim Echad HaSheni Derech Nishoseim Shehayu Achayos. V'Aposem L'Hayin Zeh Im Zeh. V'Nim Sheshavas Kfiras Akas Rishona. Okay, so Einam Yecholim. Okay, V'Rishonim Shekafru V'Sidu B'Mam B'Basashah. So that's exactly what it is. Okay, so that's exactly right. That's what it's saying, right? First set was eligible. There were two sets. One was eligible to testify. One had marriages to wives that were about to die. This group couldn't swear at all yet because they weren't even eligible.
Right.
This group denied. Once this group denied it, they're liable because they're the only kosher set right now.
Right.
Then they're liable. Then the wives of these died. Now they become eligible witnesses. When they swear also, they're also the only set left, and they deny, and therefore they're also liable for the shua. Right?
Now they're both.
And the chiddush is that when this set denied it, so then this set existed, but they were ineligible to testify because their wives were still alive. Why should we consider their wives alive? Presume their wives are going to die in any minute, and this will be and say, you can't hold these guys liable because at the end of the day, in 5 minutes, these guys are going to be able to testify anyway.
No, you don't.
Yeah, but
And the answer is that it doesn't matter that in 5 minutes. Right now,
Right.
these are the only eligible witnesses.
right.
That's
I
the
was gonna
point.
say, like,
So it's not
imagine,
it's about
imagine like imagine Yarshining work like that. Like, oh, I think he's about to die.
Well, in Yorshining, because there's a moment when the land transfers at the moment of death. So
Right.
it's everyone's possession at that moment, right? This, Eidos doesn't have to be in the moment.
Right.
At this moment, I only have one set of witnesses, but in 10 minutes, I'm going to have another one.
Right.
Right?
They have to wait if they were going to do that.
And the answer is, yeah, but that's in 10 minutes. Right now, they are liable the moment that they did. Says the next Mishnah. Okay, so the Mishnah says, Mashbi ani aleichem im lo tav'u v'ti'iduni. Now, I'm swearing upon you that if you don't come and give testimony to me, sheyesh li biyad ploni pikadon, that I have some sort of an object that so-and-so is holding for me, utisumas yad, or also he has a loan, right? Sumas yad is a loan, or he owes me money. Vegezel, or he stole from me. Ve'aveda, or he has one of my lost items. And so in all of those circumstances, Shvua she'ein anu yodim l'cha edus, if they swear that they don't know testimony, ein chayaven ela achas, right? Then they're only going to be liable one time, right? Because despite the fact that they listed all of these things, right? This person, oh, he has this, and then he stole from me, and he's got my lost object. He's got that. Okay, we don't know anything. One testimony. Okay, that's all it is. Because you're saying we don't know. We know nothing.
Right.
That's one statement in denial of five claims. However, if they say Shvuah she'ein anu yodim sheyesh lecha biyad ploni pikadon u'sesumas yad vegezel ve'aveda, if they go through and they say we don't know testimony about this, and we don't know about this, and we also don't know about this, and we don't know about this, every time that because the guy said, right, you know testimony about this, right? So they're just repeating, no, we don't know testimony about this, but each statement is a separate statement.
Right.
They're separate each statement. So then chayav and al kol achas v'achas, then each of those statements is its own denial, and therefore he is liable for each and every one of those denials. Mashbiya ani aleichem, he says to them, I take an oath, im lo tava'u v'ta'idu, if you don't come and you don't testify, sheyesh li biyad ploni pikadon chitin, u'se'orin v'kusmin. You should know that he has in his possession a bunch of my wheat, a bunch of my barley, and a bunch of my spelt. If they answer back, Shvuah she'ein anu yodin l'cha edus, we don't know any testimony for you, ein chayav milachas. That's only one statement.
Right.
Shvuah she'ein anu yodin l'cha edus sheyesh l'cha biyad ploni chitin u'se'orin v'kusmin. If they say, we don't know anything about the wheat, we don't know anything about the barley, and we don't know anything about the spelt, then chayav al kol achas v'achas. Then they're going to be liable for each and every statement.
That's like a shuvah, same thing we said with a shuvah.
We said similar things by Shevuos. What's nice about this Masechta is it started off very complicated, and by the time you get to the end, you go, oh, that sounds familiar. I understand what that means, right? You know where it's going. So
It gets easier and easier.
well, only because we get smarter and smarter, right? It's not less complicated. It's just that we understand what those things mean.
Yeah.
What's a little bit complicated over the next few pages is that they explain Mishnayos before we even saw the Mishnah yet. Right? In other words, this case is coming up. What about this case? We didn't see it yet, but we're explaining it now anyway. So,
Leave it a cliffhanger.
So,
Give it
yeah.
a cliffhanger. Sneak peek.
Mashbiya ani aleichem. I'm giving you guys to take an oath. Im lo tava'u v'ti'iduni. If you don't come and testify for me, sheyesh li biyad ploni nezek v'chatzi nezek, that the guy owes me damages. He owes me a half damages situation. Tashlumi kefel, double situation, where he stole from me and therefore he's chayav to pay back double. V'tashlumi arba v'chamisha, he stole a sheep or an ox from me and he stole it, and he slaughtered it, and he sold it. So now he's chayav 4 or 5 times the amount. V'she'onos ish ploni esbiti, or that so-and-so raped my daughter. V'upata esbiti, or so-and-so seduced my daughter. V'shikani, and therefore in those circumstances, you're chayav for damages and doctor bills and all of those kinds of things as well. But you're also liable a knas penalty of a standard 100 shekel, 50 shekel amount, right? V'shikani b'ni, or my son hit me, but he didn't cause a wound. V'shechavel bi chaverai, or that one of my friends caused a wound to me. Okay, and now you're going to be liable in those circumstances to for damages in those circumstances.
That hits you, and he doesn't cause him. Wouldn't he still be chayav for hitting his own father?
No, that's the point, right? You're only chayiv for hitting your father if you make a mark. That's the critical piece to it. We're going to explain this Mishnah. We won't get ahead of ourselves too much, but we'll explain the Mishnah. So v'shehedlik es gidishai, he lit my stack of hay on fire. Right, he burned my stuff.
On Yom Kippur.
On Yom Kippur, he did it. Right, he did on Yom Kippur, no less. Hare elu chayovin. In that circumstance, so they are chayav if they deny the testimony. Okay, why? Because the rule that we said is as long as they're denying money liability, so then you're liable. Then they're going to be liable for this false oath. All of these are going to be circumstances. We're going to question each one why the case is unique. Each one of these is going to cause somebody a financial damage, a financial responsibility, and since it's a financial responsibility, you're going to have to pay it. You're going to bring the korban.
I'm trying to understand what's the difference. Like I understand in Shevuos,
Yep.
Like it's what because you're multiple averas, but in this case, it all adds up anyways to the same financial loss, does it not? Like if I say I'm chayav for all or I'm chayav for each one, what's the difference?
Well, it's your korban obligation. This is not an Edom Zomim situation. You don't have to pay. You're not paying, right?
Right.
You're just bringing separate korbans.
Right.
Says the Gemara, Ibo Elahu. Ask question. Mashpia Eide Knas Mahu. The question that I want to know is, what if the witnesses are testifying? This guy says, this guy owes me a payment that is a knas payment. Not a financial payment, but a knas payment. So what is the law? So Aliba de Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon lo tibaylach. I don't have the question. According to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, it's not a question. Why? To Amar, because he says, Yavo Edim v'ya'idu. He says that the rule by knas is that if I come to Beis Din and I testify that I did it, I committed the crime, I'm exempt from paying the knas. Right? That's the rule. Now, according to Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, that exemption is not everlasting. All that means is that if I walk into court and I say, I feel really bad, guys, I did this avera and I'm chayav the knas, they say, okay, we hear you, and then they don't make him pay. But if two witnesses walk in 5 minutes later and say, he did it, then they do have to pay.
If you feel bad, you're still admitting it. Should you still be somewhere to pay?
Now with knas, that's the rule with knas. The rule is motive knas is pater, right? That's Maseches Makos that we learned. Motive knas is pater, right? You're not paying if you are admitting that you are liable to a knas avera.
Unless the witness comes in and says as well.
But the chacham, that's Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. If a witness comes in as well, then you do pay. Okay, so therefore you're not permanently off the hook. It means it's temporary off the hook. Right, but kiti boilach, and so therefore, as far as he's concerned, there's no real difference between a knas penalty and a financial penalty, right? Because ultimately the guy's paying, so it makes no practical difference. The guy's going to end up having to pay for the seduction or the rape anyway. He's going to pay for it, the knas payment. Kiti boilach. The question that we really want to know is aliba de rabbanan. According to the rabbi's view, according to the rabbanan, to Amri mode beknas v'achar kach bo edim pater. They say if a person runs to Beis Din and he admits it in Beis Din that he did the avera, so then witnesses come after him and say he did the avera. Beis Din says too late. Once he already admitted it, he's not chayiv.
Right.
Okay? So now, the Rabbanan are essentially telling us that a knas payment is not the same as a financial payment. Therefore, even though this might be a circumstance where the witnesses are being told, come to testify because the guy has not admitted it yet, right? Nevertheless, knas does not have the same rules as financial payments. Therefore, the question that we're asking is, according to those who say knas doesn't work like other finances works.
Knas is more like a punishment.
Knas is a punishment. It doesn't work like other finance payments. So then, if somebody refuses to testify about knas, is he liable for this shvur or not?
Right. I would say he should be because he's
okay. So for Rabbanan dehasam kinman svir lehu. So the Rabbanan over there, who are they holding like? Okay. Ilema, so the Rabbanan dehasam, the Rabbanan of the Brisa that say that somebody comes in and they say that somebody that the Rabbanan over there in the Brisa that hold that somebody is mowed the biknas, somebody admits it, and then the witnesses come after that you're exempt. Who are they holding like, right? About this in this argument between Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, and the Rabbanan that we brought before, right? About one witness being of one witness got sworn and he denies it, right? Whether you're liable in Shevuos Eidos. If they're holding like Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, dehacha, so that they're holding like Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon over here, right, where he says by Shevuos Eidos, Amar, he's the one who says that davar hagorim lemamon kemamon dami. He said that anything that causes a financial payment is like money.
Right.
And therefore, knas, even if it's not money, it certainly causes money. So therefore, for sure, it should be liable according to him. However, Ella kirabanan dehacha. We're asking the question according to the Rabbanan over here. De Amri, they say davar hagorim lemamon lav kemamon dami. The issue of being liable for Shevuos Eidos doesn't matter about whether you're paying money or you're not paying money. The issue is that it's not money. It's a knas. It's a different thing. So therefore, even if it causes you to ultimately pay money, knas is at best something that causes you to pay money. You're chayav the knas. Therefore, you're going to pay the money, right? Not you're chayav a knas of money. It's sort of a different thing. Okay? So the question is, according to their view, how do you view knas? Is knas money or is it knas not money enough?
Knas is money, but it's not like
it is and it isn't. You can see it both ways.
That's the beginning of Makos.
Right? It's good, right? Because we go back.
Yeah.
This is the nice thing about doing Daf Yomi is that if you didn't do Makos a month and a half ago, this Gemara wouldn't be as easy to do. Right? Kavan de ilu moda miftar. What do you say? Since the guy, if he would have come to Beis Din, he would have exempted himself. So lav mamona kakafarle. So therefore, knas is not money. It's a different thing. Therefore, when you got sworn to testify and you refused to testify, you're not. You can't. Doesn't follow the same rules. We can't call you a violator of an oath.
Right.
O Dilma, or perhaps hashta miha lo odi. He hasn't testified yet. Now he hasn't admitted it yet. Now, so therefore, if I would testify it in court, he'd have to pay. So therefore, it's money. So which way do we look at it?
Here, it's not using the word yet.
Correct.
That's why
Well, we don't know yet. So it's not yet because we don't know he's going to do it. We're just saying at this point he hasn't done it, right? So Toshma, come and listen. Now we try to answer this question. Mashbia ani aleichem, in our mission it says that I'm making you take an oath. Imlo tava'u v'te'eduni, that if you don't come and testify on my behalf, sheyeshli biad ploni nezek v'chatzi nezek. Right, that guy owes me damages and he owes me half damages. Now, how does half damages work? Half damages is a knas, because the definition of a knas is when the value of what I caused the damage to is not what I'm actually paying. That must be a penalty. So keman da'amar palga nizka mamona. So that presumes that the answer is our Mishnah presumes like the opinion that says half damages is actually money. It's not knas. It's an argument whether half damages are knas or not.
And you're getting some of your money back.
So what's going on? So that's great according to the opinion that says half damages is money. Why? How do they look at it?
Because then knas is not money.
I have an ox, right? My responsibility is to guard my ox. I didn't guard my ox. It gored. Therefore, I'm liable to pay for the damage. However, since it's uncommon, the Torah said, we'll forgive half of it. That means that you're liable to a half. That half payment is money.
Right.
It's just that the Torah forgave the other half. Okay? That's one way of looking at it. Elamandar Maknosa, but the other side says, really, oxes are domesticated animals. They don't gore people. Don't gore animals. They don't. Therefore, it's completely unexpected. And when it gores, you're really not responsible. But your ox did gore. Therefore, we're going to make a knas on you, and you have to pay half damage. So that's the other way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is you shouldn't be liable at all. But knas, you are liable. Okay? So according to the opinion, it says that it's a knas, samayikal meimar. So then how are you going to explain our Mishnah? And our Mishnah seems to imply that you are chayav for the Shevuos Eidos if you swore against paying the half damages. So the answer is there's another circumstance of half damages besides goring oxes. Bechatzi nezek tsuros. We're talking about the half damages that occurs when an animal is walking along the ground and it kicks up pebbles, and the pebbles shoot out and cause damage to things on the side of the road.
Like your car, for example.
On a car could also be a similar thing, could do it with a car too. Now, since it's reasonable, animals do walk, right? It's a reasonable thing that you should be worried about what it's going to walk on. Therefore, but it's unreasonable that the rocks are going to shoot out and hit something else. It is money, and you're only going to be liable to half. Therefore, unlike when it comes to goring, a shore damage, the goring, is an argument whether it's knas or not. The half damages that you pay when pebbles, because that's a tolada of regel, not of shore, right? That's regel. You are definitely, regel is always money. It's not a knas. So therefore, the Hilchasa Gemiri law, we learned a halacha Moshe Sinai de mamonu. That is a financial penalty. Okay, that is a financial penalty, and that's why our Mishnah says you're chayav the Shevuos Eidus. If the Chatzi Nesek doesn't prove our case, Toshma, come and listen. Tashlumi Kefil, the next case in our Mishnah, that for sure is going to tell us. What about paying double for the robbery? Right, that second payment is for sure knas. The answer is mishum karno. The answer is no. The oath is because you denied paying the double, and included in the double is the original value of the item that was stolen. And the original item that was stolen is not a knas, only the second part is. So therefore, by denying the entire payment, you're denying the original amount, and that's why you're liable to the oath. But tashumi dalad vehe, so you know where this one's going. What about the paying 4 or 5 times? Me'eshum karna, because again, the same thing, because the original value of the ox that you stole 4 times or 5 times the sheep, right? That's going to be okay. So sha'anos ish ploni. What about the next case, the rape case, right? So in that circumstance, upitas biti, or the circumstance of the seduction case of the minor. So in those circumstances, for sure, there's a knas there. So the answer is mishum bo shesu pagam. Remember, there were other financial obligations besides those, and that was the embarrassment that was caused, the damage that was caused. So therefore, you're going to be liable for those. You're going to be liable if the person denies owing any money for that. So then he's going to be chayav the Shevuos Eidus for the denial of those other parts, which are damages, not for the knas parts. Right. So my kamash malon kula mamono. Well, if that's the case, the whole Mishnah is just talking about financial cases. So Reisha chada kamash malon, seifa chada kamash malon. So therefore, the answer is the first part of the Mishnah is coming to teach us one thing, and then the second part is coming to teach us a second thing. Right. Okay? And what is that? Reisha chada kamash malon. The first one is telling us that dechatzi nezek tsuros mamanu. That first of all, you should know, because it wasn't necessarily clear, that when you're paying half damages that comes to pebbles, everyone agrees that's financial payment. That has nothing to do with nezek. That's not necessarily so clear, because it's a half damage. Seifa, the end is, chada kamash was coming to teach us this, that ushehidlik es gidishay b'yom kippurim, that when somebody lights a fire on Yom Kippur to burn the hay down, so then you are liable for a financial penalty. Now, why should... It's a malacha, and therefore what? Therefore, you should be chayiv kares for the malacha, and your chayiv payment. Well, we know kamle b'derabimine applies where you're chayiv misa on Shabbos. You wouldn't have pay, but on Yom Kippur, where it's where the penalty for malacha is only kares, you are chayiv the money. So what is it? Lafuki mai. What is it coming to exclude?
You type both, right? Because there's no kamli d'Rabbi meaning.
So it's lafuki midrab Nechunya ben Akana. It's coming to exclude Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana's opinion. Titanya Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana haya ose Yom Kippurim k'Shabbos litashlumin. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana said no. That payback for damage caused during a violation of a malach on Yom Kippur works just like Shabbos. Why? Because he does hold that kares and mamon is a kamle b'derabba mine situation.
Even though one's in
Shemayim and one is on earth. So that is Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. But everybody else does not hold that way, which is why we put it in our Mishnah to make sure that everybody understood it is not. It is.
Rabbi Nechunya called your chayav misa, right?
Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana is going to say you're chayav kares, right? Everybody's going to say you're chayav kares. The question is whether you're also chayav the financial payment or not. Toshma, come listen. Mashbia ani aleichem im lo tava'u v'te'eduni shehotzi ish ploni shemra albiti. Another case that's coming up. This is what I said. The Mishnayos that are coming in the future get explained now, and then we'll have Then we'll have less to explain later, okay? Case coming up is, the person says, I'm going to make you take an oath if you don't come to testify, right, that this person spoke badly about my daughter, said that she wasn't a Basula, and now he's chayiv a payment, right, of 100 kesef, 100 silver pieces. Now, you can't say there's a damage because there's no damage there because they were married, right? So what's going on? So, hodem piatzmo potter, right? And we say that if this motzi shemra person comes into another base, so then you're chayiv and Shevuos ha'idus. If he goes into another court and he testifies, he'd be exempt because it's a knas.
Right.
So the answer is Hamani. Who's this? And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimoni. This is Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon's opinion. Da Amar, as he says, Yavo Edim v'ye'idu. That that opinion over there that says that he's liable, even though it's a Karen, is because that does hold like Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. And we said for sure, according to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, since Knas is a financial penalty, because even if you did run into Beis Din, you'd still have to be liable to pay afterwards if more witnesses came in afterwards. Then it would be a circumstance you'd be liable only because it's Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon's opinion that you'd be liable. Everybody else would say Knas is different and you don't have to pay for Knas. Okay, Ema Seifa, but then the next part of the Mishnah says, Hoda me'atzmo potter, that if he admitted himself he's exempt. Well, 1 second. Also the Rabbanan, that's the Rabbanan Shita. Because Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon says if he admitted himself, he's not exempt, right? He'd be liable when the witnesses come back.
Right.
So the answer is Kula Rabbi Elazar Shimon. No, it is Rabbi Elazar Shimon's opinion. V'hachi kamar. This is what it means to say. Lo mishkachas lahoda mipi atzmo de pater elahecha deleka edim klal vehoda me'atzmo. What he's saying is the time. You know when you are exempt? When there's no witnesses at all, no witnesses come at all, and you're the only one who comes into Beis Din and says something. Then you're a pater. Then you're exempt. Otherwise, Rabbi Shimon would agree that you'd have witnesses. You would be chayiv, and that's why he holds that it's that the person is chayiv for denying the shvuah.
Interesting. So you don't get to testify before the witnesses do, or your testimony doesn't hold water as much.
According to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, it doesn't matter. Your testimony of moda b'knas is pater isn't a permanent status, according to him. It's a momentary status. Okay, we'll stop here in the Mishnah.
Perfect.
Good place for Rabbi Rand to pick up, even though
Great spot.
we're behind him.
Yeah. Well.